do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Good morning and welcome to the July the 19th edition of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. We thank you for being a loyal listener and follower of the show. And to get in contact with the show, you can dial this number, 516-453-9921. And as many of you already know, press the number 1 button so that I know that you want to say something or have Mr. Fuller answer your questions. And while you do that, make sure that you give the call screener your name so that I can properly give you an introduction. And if you are new, thank you, Corey. Thank you. Looks like it's I can't pronounce that. Marie. Anyway, you'll get me together when I get anyway from New York. Oh, Darnell? Okay, there you go. All righty, thank you. Yeah, make sure you give me your name so I can do that. I think this is John in the 832, but give your name, you're up there. But if you're a new caller, please make sure you give the call screener your name so that I know who you are. And not only that, if you're a first-time caller, make sure you tell them that so that we have something special for you. You can also contact the show or contact me by my Gmail address. It is the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. And I will get that, and I will read that. I will let you know, first of all, that I got it. I will say got it, and I will read it at the appropriate time. As a matter of fact, I have 3 outstanding ones today that I hopefully will be able to get to, so that they're provocative. So let's say that. You can also go to the chat room. Just go to blogtalkradio.com, and then you want to make sure that you click on programs, and you want the Produce Justice Show. Get that, click that, and then once you click that, the chat room becomes available for you to enter in. As Still Learning, Emery Lumumba, and Constructive Action Items is in there. One thing about Constructive Action Items, what Construction Items does is lays out a program of what was talked about last week so that you have an idea of what we are talking about. And there are some beautiful chats that go on there. So you can do that. You can do that. Yeah, Grand Rising to you, Still Learning, yes. Okay. Let's start off with the show. I think that's all the new ones I have to do. Don't forget, thank you, Swa. Don't forget, when you call in, give the call screener your name. Please do that. Okay, let me introduce to some and present to others Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Okay, let's start it off. We're going to start off, Mr. Fuller, by having thoughts and expressions of the mind of Neely Fuller. What's on your mind this morning, Mr. Fuller?
Well, I was thinking about what was on the program last week at this time, and one lady had called in, I think, and wanted to know what to do when someone gets in your face, and I didn't answer that question in a way that codified way, and it was right there in front of me, and I neglected because I just couldn't keep up. I was trying to think of what I would say right at that moment without thinking of what does the code book actually say. What's the best way to go about it? I hadn't thought about it enough. I started trying to answer without thinking, which is always a mistake, because the code says you don't answer a question when you don't know the answer. Just say you don't know. At the moment, you'd have to think about it, and then you slow down and think about it, and then you answer. But I was performing like a person does normally, just try to start fishing for an answer because you're supposed to come up with an answer. But if the answer is I don't know at the moment, I have to think about it for the moment. So right after we went off there, I thought about it, and the answer was right there in the code book, page 171, 172. What she meant by somebody get it in your face, because I did ask that question. What do you mean by that? And then I started stumbling and fumbling. That's why we need a code where you just know what to say and what to do under all circumstances. That would be the best thing to say or do, because it doesn't get any better than the best. I'm not saying that I can come up with the best answers, but there is a best answer to every question and a worse answer to every question, which means if there's a worse answer, that's not really an answer, because the answer to a question is the best answer. Otherwise, it's not a real answer to the question that should be paid attention to. But every question has a best answer, and the best answer is also the answer to the question, the answer. So the procedure here suggested in the code book, textbook workbook for victims of white supremacy, would be on page 171 and 172. And the question was, what do you do when somebody gets in your face? What do you say? And what you do is make an assessment of why the person is in your face. And in order to do that, you do that immediately according to the code, to logic, because all answers to every question is supposed to be based on logic, the most constructive logic. You assume that the person wants something, because that's on the pages of the textbook workbook for victims of white supremacy, 171 and 172. Mm-hmm. So it's about wants, W-A-N-T. And when you get lost, like I did on the program last week, you can always go to 171 and 172 because everybody wants something. Now, what the person who called in wanted was an answer to that question. And the illustration that was given was somebody getting in your face. So that person wanted something, the person who gets in your face. So what's the logical procedure, codified procedure? You want to know what it is that they want you to do, because that's usually when somebody gets in somebody's face, they want you to do something. So it was right there. So what's the correct answer to that question? What do you want me to do? That would be what you would ask the person who got in your face in a hostile manner, so to speak, and had a lot to say about this and that and the other. So you would just immediately go to the wants, because everybody wants something. So that person evidently wants something. They wouldn't be talking to you in the first place and wouldn't be talking in that manner. So it's something they want you to do. So that's the logical question. What do you want me to do, sir or ma'am? And why do you want me to do it? How do you plan for me to do it? This calms the whole situation down some. And what do you expect the constructive result to be?
Yes.
It's a one-size-fits-all type scenario that in the code book, you can always go to that anytime you get lost about what to do or say in any circumstance.
Yes, sir. Okay.
And so that would be the answer to the person's questions. What do you do when somebody gets in your face? You just say, sir, ma'am,
what do you want me to do? Or you can ask them, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How do you plan to do it? And what do you expect the constructive result to be?
Absolutely.
Now you can say that if it applies, or if it's something they want you to do, you can ask it in that form.
Yes, sir.
And it's supposed to always work. Always.
Yes, sir.
That's why it's code. Code means something that always works.
Right.
You don't have to guess about it. You know it's going to work before you do it.
And for the new callers or people who are new listening, that information can be obtained by going to producejustice.com and getting the book, which will give you the answers to that. And as Mr. Fuller just stated, that is on page 171 and 172. It's called The Four Wants. You can get that. You can also get the book by going to Amazon.com. Also, make sure you tell them about the show, and I think there's something special that happens there. Constructive action items, Mr. Fuller has indicated that there are 7 points here, but in conjunction to what you were saying, and you were addressing the caller's question, one of the things that constructive action items had to say was the number 4 thing, which was from last week's show: slow down and think before you say or do anything. And number 5, always focus on solving the problem in front of you. And you did that this morning, Mr. Fuller, by going back and reviewing what you said and then addressing it to make sure that there's clarity in there, because we don't want confusion. Moving on, let's do this. This comes from, and I have permission to use this name, Tony Mack. He says, Mr. Fuller, I hope all is well with you. This is Tony Mack calling from Houston, Texas, which I call Houston. Anyway, he said, my question I have for you, Mr. Fuller, is where is the proof that whites that practice white supremacy rule this entire planet can be found at? Thanks, and I'll be listening for your response.
Where is the proof?
Where is the proof that whites that practice supremacy rule this entire planet? Where can that be found at?
Well, I say it can be found by experiencing it and just by looking around you and just coming to that conclusion, if that's the conclusion you come to, by saying, who are the most powerful people on the planet? And then doing everything you can to find out who the most powerful people on the planet are as far as the affairs of non-white people who are classified as non-white. And you either come to the conclusion that that's not true or that it is true, that white supremacy exists or it doesn't. That, everybody says they can prove whatever viewpoints they have taken. And I'm taking that, I'm saying by the evidence, like you prove anything. And I have found from the evidence that that's true. I didn't really want that to be true, but I made up my mind so far, because I haven't seen any contrary evidence that it's true. Now, there are other people who say, that's a bunch of nonsense. There's no such thing as white supremacy. And they've said that on this program. I mean, many people have said it off and on other programs I've been on down through the years. And at seminars I've attended, people have taken the floor and said, what is he talking about? Is this fellow crazy? I mean, is he blind or what? Where did he get all that stuff about some white supremacy? That doesn't exist. I mean, I mean, that's a bunch of garbage. I mean, I don't know what he feels. Who let him loose in here? People have actually said those things. And I say that if that's what people find is true, stick with what you found and see where it takes you.
Okay.
That's the codified procedure. You know, that's the way I'm supposed to answer. If you either believe that it's true or you don't. And the first assumption you have to make in order to use the counter-racist code is that racism in the form of white supremacy does exist. And I say that the textbook that I have written is not for people who do not believe that they are victims of the system of white supremacy, which I have taken the conclusion is the world government.
Yes, sir.
And I say that if you don't believe that you're a victim, if you're a person of color, a non-white person, a black person, if you don't believe that you're a victim of the system of white supremacy, that white supremacy does exist worldwide, then the book is not for you, nor is this program. I've said that consistently.
Yes,
because
you have.
It isn't.
Okay.
It's just something you have to either believe or you don't.
Yes, sir. All righty. Well, that takes care of you, Tony Mack. Hope that's the answer. Well, anyway, Mr. Fuller did address your question. Phone lines. Delbert, Texas. Get ready, Del. Get ready. 1, 2, 3. Let me see. You are on. Go ahead, Delbert.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Mr. Fuller, my question is about the activity that occurred in Japan prior to you getting there, the bombing in Japan, and it relates to the use of direct and indirect violence. Can you elaborate on the use of violence on the Japanese?
Well, the Japanese reported to have declared war in 1941, December the 7th, by bombing a place called Pearl Harbor, and they said, they, meaning President Roosevelt, some hours later, announced to the Congress, we are now at war officially with the Empire of Japan. That was an announcement in 1941, December the 7th or 8th, I think it was the day after the bombing. And then he went before the Congress, President Franklin Roosevelt, and said that the United States and the Empire of Japan were now at war. So then there was a war. He announced that there was a war. The Japanese said, well, he has announced officially that it is. We announced it by bombing Pearl Harbor. All right? That was our announcement, that we are now officially at war. So he just verbalized it, he meaning President Roosevelt. And that's what was reported then. They didn't have television then, and they had radio in some homes, in some houses, and that's how I got the news. I think I was around 13 years old, and I asked questions about it. Well, what does that mean? You know, I thought we, meaning whoever we is supposed to be, I thought we were supposed to be fighting Hitler. What's this thing about the Japanese bombing a place called Pearl Harbor? Where's Pearl Harbor? And that's what a lot of people were saying. Japanese, I mean, where'd that come from? We didn't even know that there was anything going on there except they're supposed to be fighting the Chinese. And so we just came to the conclusion that this looks like something real bad is going to happen. I mean, it might happen to me. So that's all I knew at the time. I was 13 years old.
All righty. Thank you, Delbert. You know better. You better not be a stranger. Let's see. We're 10 minutes outside of break. Let's see. Corey, I'm from Milwaukee. Corey, Milwaukee, talk to me.
Greetings, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Fuller, I had a question. As a non-white prisoner of the system of white supremacy racism, when someone asks, how are you doing, and if I choose to respond in like to how you do, sir, saying I'm still learning, which I think is the best answer for that question, and the person asks, what are you learning? What are some of the best counter-racist codified responses to give to this?
Just tell the truth. And it's starting with the first thing that you say, I'm still learning. Then ask yourself, am I still learning? Have I given up on learning? When did I stop learning? You can ask yourself a lot of those questions and answer yourself truthfully. Then you'll give the same answer to anybody who asks you about it. I say I'm still learning because I am. I'm learning every time I'm on this program. I'm learning every minute of the day. I'm trying to learn something. Now, why am I trying to learn something? Because I think I need to solve a lot of problems. And why do I think I need to solve a lot of problems? Because I have them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a series of answers to a series of questions about learning. Because the code says you should always be learning so you can become educated. Now, when is a person educated? You're only educated when you know everything that you need to know. According to the code. That's the logic. You are educated when you know everything that you will ever need to know. So I say that, speaking for myself and using logic, I most likely will never be an educated person. Education is an ongoing process according to logic. You're supposed to be learning something that you need to know all the time, as long as you don't know everything that you need to know. You're not educated. That's the assumption.
Yes, sir.
If you want to choose to look at education that way. See, it's all a matter of what your choice is. I choose to look at it that way because I say that it's what? It's constructive and it's logical. Always according to the code, you should always try to do the most constructive thing, which means you have to use a lot of logic. Everything you do should be logical, meaning it makes sense. You shouldn't ever do anything that doesn't make sense, according to the code. Ever.
Right. That takes a lot of learning.
Yes.
Corey, thank you for your call. Tell you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to read a Gmail, but I'm going to take a station break first because the Gmail is a little long and Mr. Fuller may give a long explanation. So let's do this. You're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. We would love for you to join the conversation, and all you need to do is do this. Dial this number, 516-453-9921, and you're there. Now, you can listen to the show on that number, but if you have a question, just hit the number 1 button, and then when the call screener comes on, give them your name. I almost said give them your address. No, don't do that. Just give them your name so that I can give you a proper introduction. All right, that's good. Now, if you are a new listener to the program, you might be a little intimidated in calling because you're going to be heard all over the world, and whatever you say is going to be in cyberspace forever. Don't be scared. just give the call screener your name and tell them you're a first-time caller, and we will expedite you in a position where you can be heard. All right, that's good. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBDY, @gmail.com, and I will get that, and I will tell you that I got it, because I put got it on there, but it will be read at a time when we have more time in the show, as we may have some today. Thank you. And lastly, you can also join the chat room, and my chatters are there, ready, willing, and able to give you all the latest information that you may want to have, and good conversation. And as Mr. Fuller just said, still learning. As a matter of fact, we have a person in there, name in the chat room, named Still Learning too. Yeah, gave him some pub. Yeah, okay. Still learning too. So you can do all that, get in there and learn something, as I learn also. I think that's, oh yeah, and don't forget, this is important. You can go to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com. You can get all the latest books, or book actually, and what's going on. You can even get past shows. You can get that. And when Mr. Fuller is on the Carl Nelson show, usually there's information on that, so that we know when he is going to be on there, and we can get a double listen to him whenever. I don't know if he's been on July yet, but I'll ask him that here anyway. But make sure you go to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And for those that are ordering, if I think we've solved the problems at producejustice.com in getting the material, but if you can't, or something is not going real well there, you can also go to amazon.com and you can get the book there. Just mention this show there. You're all set. All right, now before I read this Gmail, Mr. Fuller, the production issues or whatever, have they been solved concerning getting the material at producejustice.com, as far as you know?
I've been told that it will be sometimes within the next 10 or 12 days.
Okay. All right, that's good. And lastly here, I didn't see it on there, but have you received any information when you will be on the Carl Nelson show?
No, I have not.
Okay, all righty. There you go. Okay, there we have it. Okay, here, let's go to this Gmail here. Okay, all righty. Come on, wait a minute now. Come on, Mr. Bobby. Yeah. I want to go to the Gmails. There we go. Okay. This is from Media Hash, and this is the measure of constructive results. I had that in a question mark. Okay. It says, Mr. Fuller, in a recent show, the 21st of June, 2022, you explained to a lady, her name was T, that for her to be able to, quote, manage in this system, end of quote, and not be mentally affected by the results of the system of white supremacy, that, and this is in quotations, in continuing with her everyday life, every single move made by a person in the course of that everyday life should be a constructive one, end of quote. You went on to describe, Mr. Fuller, quote, completing the job, end of quote, as making a, quote, crack in the dam, end of quote. And this was a great analogy. So to expand upon that, can you, Mr. Fuller, give some more examples of, quote, constructive results, end of quote, in action? What could be classified as smallest, least, or least that a person can do to the most a person can do in doing their individual part in attempting to produce justice so that we can measure our constructive outcome or results to some degree?
You would have to go by the result. everything is going to either be constructive or non-constructive. So everything that has a constructive result, like if you cut your finger and you're able to stop the bleeding, because that's what might happen if you cut your finger, it might bleed. You're able to stop it and restore it to health. That's a constructive result. And if you haven't been able to get to work on time on account of there's a problem with the car, you have the car repaired, and that's a constructive result. Anything that produces it will prove itself. You only, by trial and error, or by learning from somebody who already knows what to do, which is how we learn most things. If we had to learn everything ourselves by finding out from trial and error, we'd be in real big trouble. We, meaning every person on the planet. Most of the things you learn that help you to produce a constructive result is because you asked somebody who had already produced that constructive result. The person who knows where the bus stop is and you don't know where the bus stop is can tell you where the bus stop is rather than you having to find out yourself by just walking around aimlessly looking for the bus stop. If you can stop, and people do this quite frequently, who are what you might call lost in a part of a city, for example. You ask for an example. It's a simple thing like you ask somebody, pardon me, sir, pardon me, ma'am, where's the nearest bus stop? The number 17 bus. And the person say, oh, you're just a half a block from it right now. See that sign down there? Just go down there and stand there. That's number 17. And it'll take you where you need to go, number 17. And you've been looking for the bus stop for 2 hours because you didn't recognize it and probably even saw the sign, but you didn't recognize it as being a bus stop because you just had a big 17 there maybe or something like that. And somebody who put up the sign didn't think of bus stop first, number 17. Mm-hmm. It's just a big 17 there, and everybody's supposed to understand that meant that's a part of the bus stop, and that person that told you that understood it. So that's all. I mean, you learn things from people who already know things. And that's how most of us learn. That's why we call it going to school. But the whole universe is a school, according to the code.
Yes, sir.
So you always should think of yourself as being in school. If you think logically and thinking correctly, you should say, hey, I never finished school. I started going to school from the day that I was born. I didn't start the school when I was 6 years old. That's somebody told me that, but actually, you start learning from the day that you were born, even when you don't know that you're learning.
Okay. All righty. Let's see here. Okay. Okay. VGQ here from King Negro says this: everyone should read the NBC News article, quote, black man grabbing tea from car shot by New Jersey police and paralyzed, lawsuit says, end of quote. It's about how cops wearing civilian clothing and masks drove an unmarked vehicle inside a Negro neighborhood at midnight and shot a random innocent 29-year-old multiple times. It reminds me of the person that was shot, was shot at 90 times and 60 bullets hit him on a police stop. That's going on, folks. What does Mr. Fuller always say? Don't Don't fuss, don't fight, and don't flee. Okay. Swa, you're up early out in L.A., but guess what? You're on today.
Greetings, Mr. Bobby, and greetings, Mr. Neely Floyd.
Yes, sir.
My question comes from page 271 of the Word Guide.
Word Guide. Let me get my Word Guide here. Okay. You say 271?
Yes.
Okay. All right, go ahead while I'm turning to the page here.
Yeah, so Ms. Neely Floyd, I'm asking about the word you have here, old person. I like a little bit more of counter-racist logic behind why you added this word in here.
271?
Yes.
Yes.
And what word did I add?
Old person.
Okay, I'm trying to look it up here. I don't have my glasses on. Now, let's see. What does it say?
Old person, ratio. It's in the middle of 271.
Mm-hmm.
Just a minute. You have to give me a minute if I have to look something up here.
Okay. If not, I have.
Yeah. I'm pretty close to it.
Okay.
271. Now, what is the word?
Old person.
271. In the Word Guide?
Yes, sir.
Oh, old person, you're saying? OLD.
Yes.
Okay. Use this term to apply to the following conditions. And then it says, number one, any person who loses the will to think, speak, and or act, to find truth, and to use truth to produce justice and correctness. And, number two, any person who loses the will to think, speak, and act, to eliminate racism, white supremacy. Then it says, study the ways that others use the term old person. So that means exactly what it says. Anytime you lose the will to think, speak, and act, to find truth, and to use that truth to produce justice and correctness, you are then an old person. You know, it doesn't have anything to do with your chronological age. That's a compensatory definition for old person. You don't consider yourself as being old until you lose the will to think, speak, and act, really. And I put it in a couple of words, to produce constructive results. If you want to simplify it, which I could have just done that. But anytime you're producing constructive results, you're not old. You're not old, you're not young, you're producing constructive results. Doesn't have anything to do with age. See, we think sometimes that when we're a certain age, we're supposed to start doing this and start doing that. You're supposed to be doing something constructive. I don't care what age you are. So that's just another way of looking, a compensatory way of looking at age, period. Any age. What's old? What's young? Where's the demarcation line? Those are questions. And you say, hey, you're old when you stop doing things constructively. Thinking, speaking, and acting to do constructive things. And if you're a victim of white supremacy, you're old when you stop trying to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. I think the definition is self-explanatory. It explains it. Might have to just keep reading it over and over again. But it's just another way of looking at age. And you can raise questions like, what am I here for? Because I'm here and see these, just thinking about that age, then you can think about the reason for your existence. Even if you're just here for 2 weeks. Some people are born and they are here on the planet for 2 weeks. So it comes down to a question, is that person old at 2 weeks? Well, they can say, yeah, he's the person, he or she, 2 weeks old. But old in what context? Old in how you want to look at things. They say, well, the person wasn't very old because the person was just 2 weeks. The person died, came into the world, and 2 weeks later, for some reason, some defect, birth defect, or whatever you want to call it, for some mysterious reason, the baby died, 2 weeks old. That happens all over the world, every day. All over the world, every day. So, was that an old person? They say, no, that person was extremely young. But then you say, well, why segment people into ages anyway? What does they? A lot of people have as an expression. What is that expression? Age is just a number. Well, is that true? Well, sure it is, if you want to look at it in that context. But then age can be a whole lot of things, depending on what context you want to use. In a counter-racist context, in a problem-solving context, you just say, well, hey, you can even say everybody's old and everybody's new, depending on what they're doing or what you think they ought to be doing. I came to the conclusion, my assignment with the time that I've given, because age is about time. It's about time. But it's also about what you are doing, or what you think you're supposed to be doing that you're not doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
Everything in counter-racist science is supposed to give you a new way of looking at old things.
A new way of looking at old things. Okay.
Yes.
All righty. All right, SWA, L.A., left coast, baby. Thank you. Thank you. You need to get it. Yeah, you and I are going to say you need to get in the chat. You're already there. Thank you, my brother. VGQ. This is from Justice Soldier. Says this. Here's my VGQ. A long while ago, I asked, is the problem the white psyche? Mr. Fuller answered, the problem is white supremacy. From Mr. Fuller's answers, I have concluded that the problem is the white supremacist psyche that constructed the global system of white supremacy. Considering Dr. Welsing's work, it can be concluded that the global system of white supremacy is an intra-specific, that is, within the same species, parasitic global survival mechanism for so-called, quote, white genetic survival, end of quote. Victims can break the parasitic relationship and starve the parasite by having only constructive behavior. A good example of breaking the parasitic relationship and starving the parasite is the Montgomery bus boycott that worked by withdrawing from the parasitic relationship. Best regards, Justice Soldier. Mr. Fuller, it's time for you to speak about your book. The floor is yours.
Well, the book is about solving the problem of racism from the point of view of the victims of racism. So if you don't consider yourself a victim of racism, the book is not for you. But it's suggestions. The textbook for victims of white supremacy, that's one of the titles. That's the most explicit title of the textbook. Is about, on a daily basis, what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say, a guide for the victims of racism that's supposed to help you eliminate the problem of racism in what we call the expression white supremacy and or the system of white supremacy, and with the objective not only of eliminating that system, but replacing that system with what is considered to be, logically speaking, the best system. The system of white supremacy is a system that's designed to harm people, and the system of justice would be designed not to harm people, but to help people to do the most constructive thing. So, in a nutshell, that's what the volumes that I have written and what this program is about. Replacing the system of white supremacy, a system of great harm, which is what it is, with, theoretically, would be a better system, and that's the system of justice. And address it to the individual person, what the individual person can do wherever he or she happens to be. That's a person of color, non-white person, black person, etc., anywhere on the planet, to bring that about. Bringing what about? Ending the system of white supremacy and replacing it with a system of justice, which means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. And is supposed to guide a person. You pick and choose what makes the most sense to you when you read the textbook. There are some things that may not make sense to you, so you just skip over that and pick and choose the things that make sense to you and put them to use in such a manner, thought, speech, and action, that you produce constructive results. Because when you're producing constructive results, you are automatically destroying the system of white supremacy, which is designed to keep non-white people from producing constructive results. So it's one system that's in place, and you will be happy to replace that system with something that should be in place, rather than something that shouldn't be in place, which is the system of white supremacy. And do it each and every day as an individual person. You don't have to consult anybody. You are an organization of one. Because one person doing the correct thing and doing the most powerful thing is better than a whole bunch of people doing something non-constructive and are doing something that's not solving problems in the most constructive manner.
Mm-hmm.
You can get the book by going to producejustice.com. Because that's what you're doing. You're trying to produce, or should be trying to produce, justice, because it doesn't exist anywhere in the known universe. According to what? according to the evidence.
According to the evidence. All right.
And the definitions.
All righty. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Okay, let's go to Darnell. Darnell, I think we're going to get you. Yes. Yeah, you slipped off the page, but there you are. Darnell, good morning. You still? Yeah, Darnell? Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
How you doing?
Good, sir.
Mr. Fuller, I had wanted to ask, what makes having a code so powerful?
The question is what?
What makes having a code powerful?
What making having the code, what's that last word?
Powerful.
Policy?
Powerful. Policy?
No, powerful.
Yeah, powerful. Okay, that's what I thought you said. What makes
because
the code so powerful?
Everything that is codified is more powerful than something that's not. Codification means like an electrical code. I looked at a program last night about Thomas Edison, and they were having arguments back and forth about what is the best electrical system, AC or DC. And I don't know anything about electricity myself except how to turn the light switches on and all like that. So they got into some technicalities about that. But some people back during the time when it was debatable were trying to decide, well, do you have electrical power in a house with a current called AC, alternate current, or something called DC, direct current. And so they had codified each one of those categories. And they were trying to decide which was the best codified way of producing electricity. What was the best use, whatever that means. And so it was debatable. So they finally came to the conclusion, it seems like that's what the TV presentation was about, that alternate current, AC, was superior to DC. I think that's how it came out. That's how I understood it. I could have that incorrect. Or they're both equal. I don't know how it, I got a little confused trying to keep up with it because I was just got confused trying to keep up with it. But that's an example of what, in answer to your question, of what it's all about. What's the best way to go about doing something? But that was the debate, AC or DC. We want the best way. We want the best way to put power, electrical power, in everybody's house. What's the best way? This type of current or that type of current? Because one of them is better than the other. And I never got it straight about which one was better than the other. But that's what codification is about. That's what makes a code powerful. It means out of every 1,000 things that you can do, what's the best thing in every situation? That's the codified approach. You find out what's the best way to go about saying everything and doing everything. Because when it comes to a person, every day, everywhere on the planet, people are doing things and saying things. So if you always do the best thing, the thing that will work every time, and always say the best thing, and that will work for you every time you do it the same way, it works. Every time you say it the same way. That's a code. Code means something that will work every time. You can completely rely on it. You don't have to scratch your head about whether it will work or not. You know it will work. Mm-hmm. So you'll put it to a test. And in answer to your question, that's what we need as black people. We need a code that every move that we make always works for the sake of ourselves and justice in our interaction with everybody else and when our interaction with things, which means correctness. It'll always work every time you do it or say it.
Okay.
And that's why we need a code. We don't have anything like that. But the white supremacists have a white code, and it works.
And it works.
That's why we are subject to them. And you don't have justice on the planet because their anti-justice code works because they have a code. And anything that they do in that code always works.
Always works. All right. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Darnell, thank you. Sorry it took you so long, but your name went off the screen, but we got you back on. Thank you, my brother, and do not be a stranger. Mr. Fuller, as we count down the remaining moments of the first hour of this program, I'm going to turn it over to you to see if there was something that you would like to add to today's conclusion of the first hour.
No, I'll stick to the line of questioning if we have enough time.
We're going to have enough time. We're going to have time because, as you stated earlier in the conversation, that we're all still learning.
Yes, and this program is really all about questions and answers.
Mm-hmm. And when someone asks you that, what do you say to that? What do you mean by that? This program is about questions and answers.
Because it's been proven, and this is why it's a part of the code, that questions and answers solve problems. There's never been a problem solved that anybody has ever had that wasn't solved through the process of question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. And that's already been proven.
Mm-hmm.
That's how a code, meaning something you can rely on, fire will burn, water is wet. What is fire? What is water? Those are questions. Is fire the same as water? When you put water, enough water, on a fire, what happens? That's a question. But people can find out the answer because all questions have answers. And the first answer that you'll get when you ask a question is, I don't know. That's why you're asking the question. 3 words, I don't know. Now that means since you don't know and you need to know, then you have to find out.
Which
and
means
then
why?
Once you get that question answered,
mm-hmm.
then you have another question. All problems in the universe are always solved through the process of questions and answers. Black people were taught as slaves.
Mm-hmm.
Not to ask questions.
Not to ask questions, yeah. I know it's
do what you're told.
I know it's a small question, but I don't know if you said this, but one of the questions that was asked is why?
Always.
Why?
Yes. People can give you answers to questions, but one of the most important questions, see, one question right after another. Once you get the answer to one question, you should have another question, if there are any other questions that need to be asked in order to do what? Come up with the what? Most constructive result. So
exactly.
One of those most important questions is why.
Is why.
And that's in the textbook too.
Always
ask why.
All right.
The 4 wants you have that 3-letter word, why.
Mm-hmm.
You start off saying what? You start off saying, what do you want me to do? And then the next question is, why do you want me to do it?
Yes, sir.
And then the next question is, how do you plan for me to do it? Since it's something you want me to do, what is your plan for me to do it? Since you want me to do it. And I didn't have a plan because you have a plan for me. So, so how do you plan for me to do what you want done? And then but then there's that last question, which is a real important one. What do you expect the constructive result to be?
Yes, sir.
And that's got to apply to everything that people do every day, every minute on the planet. That question should always be asked.
Okay.
What do you expect the constructive result to be? If you get ready to rob somebody or hijack a car and all like that, that question flies right there. That last question. Mm-hmm. What do you expect the constructive result to be? Underline constructive.
All right.
You're going to hijack somebody today.
Okay. And this is what we got to do. We're not going to hijack nobody, but we are going to conclude. We're a little bit over, but we're going to conclude the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Neely Fuller. We're going to break for about 7 seconds, and then we're going to commence with the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Heard here on blogtalkradio.com. We'll be back in 7 seconds. All righty, welcome back to the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, also called affectionately the CRCS, Counter-Racist Code Show. If you would like to get in contact with the show, and we would love for you to join the conversation, here it is, the numbers, 561-453-9921. And if you have something to say, and we certainly would love to hear it, question or BGQ, just press the number 1 button, and when the call screener comes on, give them your name so that I can properly give you an introduction without messing your name up, which I have a tendency to do. Don't want to do that, but anyway. You can also contact me by Gmail. The address is the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. Now, it may not be read today, but I will say this. I will say got it to let you know that it is in the system and will be read at some other time. Now, you can also do this. Get into the chat room where there is some provocative conversations that go on in there. All you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com, click on programs. You want to go to the Produce Justice Show, do that bad boy, and then when you hit that, chat comes up, and you can get on in there. Yeah. And if you want to know what we've been talking about or what we talked about last week, Shin Items has a list of things and documented what we've done last week and then current conversations that go on today. Be Good One, Be Sam 721 is in there. Emery Lumumba, Justice Warrior, I'm glad you're in here. Rita, 888's, they're still learning too. Swa, L.A., thank you, brother. And what is it, Tesnos? Yeah, all of them are in there. Get up in there and get to talking. Yeah. Okay, Marcus, I saw that you were on there, but I don't see you on there now. But call back so they can get you right up to the front. In the meantime, and in between time, we're going to go out to your old neck of the woods, Mr. Fuller, not Muskogee or whatever how you pronounce that, but we're going to go out to Oklahoma. Dre, get ready, Dre. Here we go. Dre, you are on. Go.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, Dre.
Mr. Fuller, my question is about frustration. This week I've been dealing with the effects of racism. The suspect, racist at my job, cut my hours again after having given them back to me. This racist guy was harassing me, calling me out my name and threatening to kill me. And after self-defense, I had to hurt him. How do you deal with the frustration that the system of white supremacy produces without playing into their hand and destroying your own life?
codifying everything that you do and say to produce the most constructive result. And the procedure is ask questions. You can always go if you get lost. The book that I've written is pretty thick. It's in 2 volumes, and it comes well over 800 pages in the 2 volumes. But all of it winds up being basically a very simple formula. Page 171 and 172 that you can take off in many directions with, but use that as a basic codified approach to everything. Everybody has wants. The people who are causing you frustration have a want. Now, you want them to stop giving you all of this confusion and frustration, okay? They want to give it to you. You want them to stop giving it to you. So what you do is use the codified approach in everything. Like I say, if you ever get lost, you can always go to 171 and 172 to use that as a basic codified format. What do you want to do? That's the first thing you think about. What you want to do is stop them from having you always being frustrated and not knowing what to do and all like that. So this is the procedure. Find out what you want to do, why you want to do it, and you've already said that. Nobody's average person doesn't want to be frustrated, because frustration comes from what? Not knowing what to do, okay, about a situation. And so that feeds on itself, okay? So how do you eliminate that so that you can go on and solve problems? Because that is a problem. That's what you're saying it is, and it is a problem. So how do you solve problems? Through that procedure. Find out what it is you want to do, and you've already expressed that. And then you, in order to handle it, you ask the person that you are the source of the frustration, the person that's causing you to be frustrated. Ask that person in a very polite way. Always be polite. That's a part of the code. Don't let anybody be more courteous than you in the workplace or wherever you happen to be. That's a part of the code. But your question to them, all problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. Don't forget that. That's the codified procedure. So you ask that person, what do you want me to do? If it's something they want you to do. Why do you want me to do it? How do you plan for me to do it? And what do you expect the constructive result to be if I do what it is that you want me to do? And then you can even ask yourself the same questions, which is how it is presented on page 171 and 172 in the basic code book, to refine the expanded edition, rather, 2016 edition. Ask yourself that, and then ask the other person that, the person that's causing you the frustration. What do you want me to do? Why do you want me to do it? How do you plan for me to do it? And what do you expect the constructive result to be if I do it? Just those 4 questions. They will always take everybody. That's a code that will always take everybody right where they should be. It won't take everybody where they want to be. But just use that procedure and see how that works. It'll take everybody right where they should be.
Mm-hmm.
You can ask yourself those 4 questions first. What do I want to do, and why do I want to do it, etc. And then you can ask the other person. And just do that all day. Mm-hmm. Now, you're talking about that frustration. That's what takes care of it. It will take the answers to that question. And here's another thing to remember. Don't interfere with the answers and don't argue about the answers. Just keep asking more questions. Stay in the question lane. Don't make any comment except in the form of a question. Don't make any critique. Just keep asking questions. It will always, and starting with those questions, and don't turn loose of those 4 basic questions. Those are basic questions because it has to do with wants. Everybody wants something every minute of the day.
Of the day, yes, sir.
Now, can run a test on it and see. You'll probably, you'll make mistakes. You'll have a tendency to jump in when somebody's telling you something and interfere with the answers that they're giving you rather than have another question. So you don't start making statements. Once you start making statements, then that's when the frustration starts setting in all over again.
Yes, sir.
Just keep asking questions and getting answers. It'll take you right where you need to be.
Okay. Hey, Dre, the Peanut Gallery just said don't go from full Karen on them. Okay. Be quiet, 888. All righty. A little inside joke there. Let's see, Marky, I'm trying to get to you because you were on there. Let's see here. Man. Let's see here. Marcus, I was trying to get to. There you go. Marcus, you're there. Ready. Okay, there you go. What's your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning.
Good
Mr.
morning.
Fuller.
Good morning. Thanks for waiting, too, by the way.
Yeah, anytime. No problem. Mr. Fuller, my question for you this morning is, when you were my age, I'm currently 27 years old, what would you say the common priorities were at that time, and do they differ from the priorities of black people in the year 2022?
They're just about the same. Black people's culture hasn't changed that much, except it's gotten worse. What black people call black culture, now I'm not talking about the academic stuff like being in school and talking about ancient black culture and all like that, whatever that was, kente cloth, and they built great empires and all of that. I'm talking about black culture under the system of white supremacy. And some people say that's at least 2,000 years old. Okay? Black culture has been worthless since then. Whenever the system of white supremacy took over, black culture as a reaction to white supremacy, what I put in the textbook, has been primitive, pitiful, stupid, and or silly. And it manifests itself in what I call the 3 T's in the textbook. Tacky, trashy, terroristic. That is black culture in a summation. Now, I'm not talking about how we like to look at ourselves as we think we ought to be. I'm talking about how we actually are. And the white supremacy system, they determine what black culture is, and that's what it is. Tacky. Tacky means the way we relate to each other is just tacky. The way we relate to white people is tacky. I mean, that's kind of something that's thrown together. The way we talk to each other, the way we interact with each other, the things that mean the most to each other when we interact with each other. What are we going to do with each other when we're together with each other? Tacky. Everything about it is tacky. The way we talk to each other is tacky. The way we talk to white people is tacky. The way they talk to us is tacky. It's just nothing constructive about it. Just look up the word tacky. I mean, and look at an encyclopedia and all the different types of ways that the word tacky is used, if you want to know what the 3 T's are. And then the next one is trashy. If you try to improve on the tackiness, it gets trashy. Just watch and see what we actually do. We even call it talking trash. I mean, that's mostly what we do when we interact with each other. It's just trash talk. Nothing constructive, nothing that you can really build on and learn anything from. that will produce what? A constructive result. Just as trashy as they can be. And then it goes from where? Once we start talking of trash, then that's when you get the sound of that 9mm in the middle of the night or in broad daylight now, everywhere. It becomes terroristic. And that is the summation of black culture. Tacky, trashy, terroristic in the year 2022. And how does that differ from what we had before? It's just all of the worst features of what black people were doing in 1920 are manifested themselves in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, all of the worst features, the worst ways that black people can interact with anybody have now completely taken over what we call black culture.
Mm-hmm.
So that the 3 T's, that's black culture. And the primitiveness, and we're all pitiful, and the stupid, anything stupid, we embrace it completely. Anything silly, we make monuments to it. And then manifesting itself in the 3 T's, tacky, trashy, terroristic. And in answer to your question, that's what we have now. Yes. All needs to be replaced with what? Constructive thought, speech, and action. Everything that a black person does, that question should be, is this constructive?
Mm-hmm.
There's 2 categories now, constructive, non-constructive. And in parenthesis, non-constructive, destructive.
Yes.
And when you look at what black people do by choice, I mean, we just embrace it. Anything that's just as not going to be constructive in any way. It's not going to produce a constructive result. And we embrace it. Why? We have been taught that way, directly and indirectly, by the white supremacists, and we don't even know it.
Yes. All righty. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you so much, my brother. And thank you for waiting. Mr. Fuller, you often, and people love, I mean, they just love to hear your stories or your experiences when you were in the military, and some even question how could you be in both the Army and the Air Force. But a question came up when you were, and I think Korea. Correct me if I'm wrong, and please, I stand corrected if I am wrong. But when you were there, you had a chance to think about why you were there or why you were close to that, demilitarized zone or whatever. What were the thoughts that were going through your mind as you were there in regards to this system that we're in?
Oh, when I was a soldier, it was right in my face that I was being used. Because when I got back, I had to get on the back of the bus in my uniform. I had to get up for white people on the bus. And also when I was in the Air Force. But it was during the time I was in the Air Force, I had a better situation overseas than I had when I was in the Army overseas. Because when I was in the Army, I was on the front lines, and most of what I thought about was getting out of that situation. I mean, I was in combat. 3 months after basic training in Camp Chaffee, Arkansas, I was on the front lines in Korea.
Okay.
That's where I stayed. So the only thing going in my mind was, I hope I can get out of here alive. All right? That was 10 months. The whole time I was in Korea, I was on the front lines. That 10 months. So being out of here, but being out of here meaning going back to where I came from, and, you know, I was also I did another year, I had another year to do at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and that was in what you call a segregated unit, a black unit. And so I just did my last 8 months, I think, there. And then I was out. But 4 years later, on account of my economic situation that was terrible, I wound up back in the Air Force. I didn't want to go back in the Army, so I went into the Air Force. Because, it's the difference between the Army and the Air Force, a little different. And I took that gamble. I was drafted into the Army, but I volunteered for the Air Force for financial reasons, to be blunt about it. That was the only reason. I was desperate. Either the Air Force or wind up in a small town and wind up in jail. Because that's the only thing they had for you. I mean, basically the pipeline was basically what it is now, just about everywhere when it comes to a black male. You go from the 9th grade to jail. All right? That's the pipeline. That's the plan. Oh, you talking about black males? Oh, we got that all figured out. They're going to drop out of school in the 9th grade or 10th, Then they're going to hit the streets, because that's the next thing. And we have glorified that, in the media, in popular black culture and whatnot. They're going to hit the streets, because that's the next thing. That's the next best thing. That's the next wonderful thing in the mind of a 16-year-old. Man, I'm going to be a street dude, okay? We got that all set up for them. So when they hit the streets and become a street dude, we know where that's going to lead, and that's to the penitentiary, where their uncle is, because that's what he did, okay? So they got that all figured out. So I knew that was coming. I'm going to wind up in a financial situation where, who's going to take care of me? I mean, we are completely helpless, all right? And these white people are not going to be hiring me. I drew unemployment till I couldn't draw no more. So I wound up back in the Air Force. See, they always got a place for you, all right? They know exactly where you're going to wind up. Well, I mean, before you were born, okay? Because they know the situation that your mother's in, all right? They already know that because they control that situation. So they know what has happened, what's going to happen to you way before you have any idea if you're black in the system of white supremacy. That's the magic of the system of white supremacy. They know everything about us, but we walk around acting like we know something. We ain't got an idea about nothing, even about ourselves. We don't have the faintest idea
what you
of
said
how this
about
world
us,
is run.
What you said about us reminds me, since you said it was a setup, it reminds me of the prison industrial complex. They set all that up just so they could put us in there.
Yeah.
Wow.
But while I was in the Air Force, I had time to think.
Yeah.
Something I didn't have before. And so that kind of helped me out a little bit when I got back. Because what did I think about? I thought about how the whole world was run.
Yeah.
And I came to the conclusion, this is white supremacy on steroids. All of it. Everything. Every move that I make. Even the move that I think that I'm making and nobody else has figured out what I'm doing. I say the white supremacists planned everything that I'm doing, right down to the smallest thing. They know what I'm going to think long before I think it.
Yeah.
And that was a revelation to me.
Yes, sir. That's what I was getting at. You had time to really think about this. And
you back. You're looking at it all the time. That's why I put in the textbook. In racial matters, many look, but few see. See what? See what we're looking at. Now, I'll give an illustration of that. It's like there's a mural on a wall, and you got your nose right up against that wall. Now, you're looking at the mural, but you don't see the mural. Why? Because you're too close to it. You got your nose up against it. So you just see just some scrambling or whatnot of them, just some lines and some colors. but you are not seeing what we say in a cliche manner, the big picture. So when you back off, then you say, oh, now I can see what this is. I thought this was a picture of a whaling ship, but this is a picture of a whaling ship and also the countryside and the harbor all around the whaling ship. Cows and farms and all that. That's what the whole mural is about. So the system of white supremacy is just that way. We are so close to it, we don't even see it. I mean, we're drowning in it. But when you put in, like I was in the Air Force on a radar site, and you have time to think. That's why a lot of people who are in the penitentiary write books. For the first time, they have had time to think and to read and to think about what they read, and also to think about the situation that they're in and how they got there and how their uncle over there in the other cell block got there. And they started putting two and two together. See, this is a setup. This whole thing is a setup, and I went for it. I went for the okadoke. That's why my whole family is in here. And all the people, was raised up around me, and all I do in the cell block is fight them in here. This is a big joke that's been played on me, and I didn't know it. And that is the existence of the non-white people, truth be told, on this entire planet.
All right.
Even those who are millionaires and billionaires. Because that's all a part of the scheme, too.
Yeah. Okay, let me break here. You're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., and we thank you for listening to the program. If you'd like to get in contact with the show, and we certainly would love for you too, with your questions and RTQ, just simply dial 516-453-9921. Depress. Excuse me. How about pressing the number 1 button so that you can give the call screener your name, and then when it is time, you can ask your question or give your VGQ. You can also Gmail me at my Gmail address. That is the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. And when I receive it, I will say, got it. And then I will put it in rotation. And then at a certain time, it will be read. And I will inform you of that also. And then lastly, you can do this. You could get involved with the chatters. Woo, the chatter that matters. Yeah, they on there. And they be going deep, man. Really deep. They on there right now. Go to blogtalkradio.com. Click on programs, and you want to get the Produce Justice show. And when you do that, you click that on, and then that chat room becomes available to you to enter in. Don't worry, they won't bite you, but use logic. And I'm going to tell you, for real, they be codified. Yeah, codified, for real. No joke, codified. See, not only do we have to say it, but we got to live it. I can tell you some things that happened to me yesterday that was so hard that it would make a rock cry. But I remain codified. And if you really think about it, there is an actual spiritual connection to that. But I'm not going to go there with that one right now. But yeah, so you just can't talk this. You got to live this bad boy. So stay codified. All righty, John, Houston, get ready. Get ready. Here we go. Boom. Go ahead, John. You're on.
Grand risings, gentlemen. Where did the white people go? I think the latest example started at the beginning of the Ukrainian conflict, whether you call it a war or not. The Nigerian students and the very embarrassing manner it was displayed worldwide. But the crux of my question, Mr. Bobby, to Mr. Fuller this morning would be, in those 9 areas of activity that you described, obviously religion would have to be the core source of all that you said again this morning on how we're taught, controlled, and pre-programmed. And it would, I think, be codified in looking for white Jesus. So how would you address that when it's so pervasive, starting with imperialism, colonialism, and the choice was the Bible or the bullet? Where did the white people go if you're looking for white Jesus in Christianity? And I'd like to listen to respond to his response. Mr. Bobby, thank you both for the time this morning.
You got it.
Well, the codified analysis of that is you got 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And all of these areas of activity are interactive. Religion isn't separated from politics. Because what is politics? People interacting with each other. So in religion, people interact with each other. You can't have religion without people. And if people are interacting with each other in a way that they all have the same beliefs and they act on their beliefs, because that's what religion is, that's also political. Because what is politics? People interacting with each other. So sometimes people will use a cliche saying, well, you can't have religion and politics. I mean, that's separate. No, it isn't. You can't, because if religion has anything to do with people and people interact with each other, that is political, and that's also religious. If they're interacting with each other, all having the same beliefs and acting on what they believe, because that's what religion is. And that's also what politics is. That's also what entertainment is, or economics, when you start talking about people. If it involves people, it's political. And if it involves their beliefs, that's religious. It's no different. So the white supremacists took a look at all of the people of color on this planet and say, you know what? We're going to get control of everything that these dark people do in every area of activity. We're going to tell them how to think and tell them how to act. And we will have total control over them for our benefit forever. We'll have to use some muscle, but the main thing we will use after we use the muscle, or in the process of using the muscle, we will teach them to pattern everything that they do after where we guide them to do it. And we will guide them in the way that they will always be our slaves. But we'll do it in such a way that we will deceive them into doing it. So that they'll actually think they're doing it all on their own. We'll set up an environment that will be tailored to do that. And it'll be a system that we'll loosely call the system of white supremacy. And that will be the world government. And they were able to pull this off in record time. It's a very simple idea. We will mistreat them and dominate them on the basis of color. That's real simple. We'll teach the white people from birth how to be a part of it, and we will have the type of world that we want as white supremacists. And it became the most powerful, most dominant idea in recorded history. So in answer to the question, it doesn't make any difference what religion black people say they have, what their politics is, what their educational system is. The white supremacists control it all. They control it all. ALL. Anything that black people do when they fight each other and whatnot, the white supremacists control that. All the drive-by shootings, the drugs, they control all of that. The educational system that we strut around and be proud of, and say that we have a diploma in this and that and the other, they control all of that. ALL, all of it. When we say that we have been certified to do this and do that, the certification always comes from the white supremacists. Otherwise, you ain't certified. So that's all it is. What we're talking about in answer to the question is the system of white supremacy. But they have us trained to only see little bits and parts of it, something that's obvious, like a sign on a wall saying the N-word. So then they come around and they are, they say, "Oh, that's your problem. You object to this sign." So they'll make a little fuss about it by taking it down for a while, off permanently. And then they'll look at you and say, "Now, you happy?" All right. And you'll come and you'll check and say, "Yeah, that sign been up there forever and whatnot. And y'all took it down. And so let's have a party." And they'll have the party. Sign taken down. Now, aren't you happy?
Wow.
It's giggling time now, right? And so we giggle. Okay? We're happy. Break out the barbecue. All right? The chicken wings. The chitlins. All of it. And the white supremacist says, "Boy, do we have them on a roll." These people are so blind. They are so dumb. And they say, "Now, we're not going to call you no names no more." All right? That is prohibited.
That is prohibited.
And they'll put the white people out there to even do it, to call you some names. They'll say, "See, there they go. That's them. All 6 of them. They run in the world." And the person standing next to you doing that talking, they are all in cahoots. See, the white supremacists have mastered the science of taking all sides of every argument. And we haven't caught on to that at all. Because that's the way it is in the year 2022. They skillfully know how to take every side of every argument. So when you take every side of every argument, how can you lose? We haven't figured out what they're doing. It's like magic. But they're doing it. We know that.
All righty. John, good job. You might want to check out the speech by Malcolm when he talked about the ballot and the bullet. I reviewed that so many times. It's good. Still relevant. Real relevant. VGQ, Black Tony says this. Who called you a nigger? And you believed it? That's Black Tony. Wow. Leona. Gotcha.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. Last week, toward the tail end of the show, Overtime, I asked you a question, and you at the time you hadn't had time to think about an answer, and your co-host suggested I call back today with the question, and the question was, I was listening to one of your lectures. And you mentioned something about, problem solving and how you said whatever's bothering you at the moment, that's the problem. And you mentioned something about following the logic back to the source of a problem. And I didn't quite understand all that was said for whatever reason. But my question to you, sir, was if you don't mind, if you could give an example of a recent problem that you solved and the steps that you took to solve that problem. That was a question I asked last week, and you hadn't had time to think about it. And I don't know if you still have had time to think about it or not, but I'm just following through to ask you the question again, Mr. Fuller. If you could give an example of a recent problem that you solved and the steps that you took to solve the problem. Or if you don't have an example, maybe an example that you know about, if you don't mind. Thank you.
No, I'd have to think about that because I can't think of an example right now, even though I'm trying to think of one. Usually, the person who is calling will tell me the problem that they are having, and then I have something to work with. Because there are problems all the time, and I'd have to try to give some of the best examples, and that's the codified procedure.
Okay, well, let me ask you this then. Maybe what is the codified procedure for solving a problem? Maybe that's the question. What steps? The
one, page 171 and 172. If you heard the first part of today's program, did you hear the first part?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there it was. I mean, it comes down to wants. You want to solve a problem. All right. So handling that one word, a four-letter word, W-A-N-T, want. All right. Every person wants something every minute of the day, like you want your question answered. All right. So the way to answer a question, there are four. If you want to apply that. And it has to do with that one word, want, W-A-N-T.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want me to do? And you ask yourself that question. What do I want to do? Why do I want to do it? How do I plan to do it? And what do I expect the constructive result to be? Go to page 171 and 172, because in dealing with wants, the first thing you do is deal with what you want, like you want your question answered right now. So I'm answering it by telling you it has to do with wants. So people who interact with you, they want something. So you ask them those four. I mean, you can't miss it. I mean, because all you got to do is just remember what it is you want to do, or what the other person wants to do. Why do they want it done? How do they plan to do what is wanted done? And the main question, the last question, just four. What do you expect the constructive result to be of everything that you do in solving a problem?
Mm-hmm.
That's that fourth one.
Yes, sir.
It's right. See, I can understand how the mind works when it comes to that, because I did it last week. I had the answer right there in front of me. Go to the wants. The wants. And those are the four questions that you ask, and the answers will take everybody right where they ought to be.
Yes, sir.
It won't take everybody where they want to be, but it's guaranteed to take everybody where they should be. That's a guarantee. That's why that's most important. The important four things, you might say, if you limit it to four things, in the entire code, because it has to do with people's wants, because everybody wants something every minute that they're awake.
Okay.
They want you to do something, or they want to do something that involves you.
Yes, sir. Leona, if you would permit me, and Mr. Fuller, if I have your permission, if I may add something to what you just said. Is that all right, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay. Lena, is that okay with you? Leona, is that okay with you?
If it's okay with Mr. Fuller, yes, sir. It's okay.
Yeah, he said it was okay with him. I just wanted to make sure it was okay. I had a problem yesterday. Now, I mentioned this word, codified. Not just talking it, not because I'm on the air talking it, but living this way. Anyway, I had a serious problem yesterday that was no fault of my own. But I had to remember to remain codified. It was serious because it dealt with a huge sum of money that was taken from me. Okay, rather than panic, I remained codified, calm. What did I want to do? I wanted this problem to be solved. How was I going to do it? I actually had to contact the people and explain to them so that they could see where their error was and get this resolved. I didn't like it. I didn't fuss. I didn't fight. I didn't flee. I just put this right there, thinking to be codified in everything. Slow to speak, slow to wrath, yeah. Be quick to hear, yeah. Anyway, long story short, after, 24 hours, because this morning I checked, the problem was solved, and I did receive the money back that was taken from me erroneously by the company. I don't know if it was a mistake or computer glitch, I was told. Okay. Anyway, I got it solved. But in times past when I wasn't learning or didn't understand how the system works, then I would have panicked, freaked out, and it would have went all over the place. I would have went total Karen on them, but I didn't. I just brought that up as a real-world example of how to be codified when any problem or any situation comes up, is to remain codified. Because if I don't, or if we don't, then we get off kilter, and they have something for us called greater confinement. I hope that was able to help you out, Leona. I'm sorry. Leona, yeah.
All problems are solved. Yeah, that's an excellent illustration. And remember, all problems are solved through the process of what? Questions and answers.
Mm-hmm.
Just ask questions and get an answer, and then be ready with another question, and then another question until you have all the answers. That's it. The formula is simple. Just remember to do that. Stop making so many statements. In fact, stay away from making any kind of statement at all. Just keep asking questions.
Exactly.
And keep getting answers.
All right.
And the questions and answer process will take you right where you need to be.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller, and thank you, Leona, for listening. I hope that was able to share some light on the situation, and you don't be a stranger either. Thank you. All righty. Get some holler from the dollar. I don't know why I like saying that, but here it is. Give it to us. Go ahead, Dollar. You're on.
Good morning.
Good
morning.
Hey, man.
Me?
Hey, you getting ready to get cut off. Don't do that, man. Come on.
I know. It's been such a great program today, Mr. Fuller, Mr. Bobby. Thank you for all this information. I'll make it quick today. I want to go from I'm going to say the white supremacist. I'm going to play the white supremacist. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I got black friends, I got white friends. And what they'll say to me when I give them this system of justice that we're talking about, where no one is mistreated, and the ones who need the most constructive help get the most constructive help. And what they're saying is, how do you change this system into that type of system of justice when the whole theory could never happen unless all the people become universal man and universal woman? So what they would say is, what would you change? Aren't you happy? What would be different if you got rid of this system? What would really be different? Housing, war, what would be different? So that's my question today. How would we deal with this, Mr. Fuller?
How do we deal with what? I mean, them saying that the system doesn't need to be changed?
No, them saying that if you change the system, what would you change it to? What would it look like? What would it be?
What it would look like is, in one word, justice.
Yes.
Now, what is the definition, the compensatory definition for the word justice? It means, number one, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. Not for 5 minutes. You got to guarantee that. No person on the planet being mistreated. That's number one.
But that can never happen.
And sir, that's the whole point of this conversation and this whole program and all the other programs and all the books that have been written. You have to assume, like the first person that landed on the moon, I'm going to do something and make it happen that has never happened before and that everybody said was impossible. And that's been proven by many people. They got songs written about it and all kinds of books written about it. The Wright brothers, Thomas Edison, and on and on and on. The History Channel TV is loaded with it. All the things that people did, bridges built and all like that. People said, you can't build no bridge across that river like that. I mean, that thing will fall down before you even get halfway started. I mean, there's just no way to do it. And somebody did it. Somebody did it. Why? They said, I'm just going to keep on trying and use logic. And my first attempts, like putting wings on a bicycle, that ain't going to fly. I might think it will, but it won't. And when I tried it, it didn't. But then I just kept trying to do stuff. The next thing you know, I'm flying. The next thing you know, all the people that said, you can't have people flying on some type of machine like a bird. People ain't birds. Put wings on their back, like you see in some of the ancient pictures and whatnot. People ain't got no wings that they can fly like a bird. Say, yeah, but you probably got some other equipment that will help you to fly somewhat similar to a bird. And the next thing you know, you got 800 people flying on the same plane. And that thing is heavy. You talk about weight. It's super heavy, but it's flying. And the average person will say, nothing that heavy could fly through the air. Are you crazy? You talking about 4 tons of steel and metal, and it's flying. I mean, it ain't got no feathers. I mean, you're crazy. It's the same way with everybody down through history. It's called inventions. Okay? Every inventor was laughed at. Every last one of them. The person standing on the sideline doing nothing, not trying to do nothing, always laughed at the person who was trying to invent something and say, I don't know what I'm doing or how to do it, but I'm going to find out if it can be done. And a lot of the people who have criticized people who said, I can make metal fly through the air, I can make 200 tons of steel float on water. And the person will say, wow, you are crazy. You are stupid. But then it's 300 tons and 400 tons and 800 tons of steel that's floating on water. Why? Somebody kept at it, kept trying. So it's the same way with this thing called justice. Oh, that can't be done. Seeing to it that nobody's mistreated. You can't set up no system like that. So you expect that. But you know what? you keep trying to do what everybody says can't be done. Guarantee that no person is mistreated. Now, you do it on a small scale to start with, like everything, like that bicycle, putting wings on a bicycle. That's a small scale. And it'll be sloppy at first, but you just keep at it. See what I mean? You never stop trying. Every inventor has said that. Hey, we didn't know nothing about no computer that you could carry around in your hand. I mean, a computer was something that took up a whole block. Yes, the original computers would take up a whole block and have to have a whole bunch of people running up and down the aisles and whatnot just to get a message across. But somebody looked at all that big hardware and said, you don't have to do all this. You can downsize all this. It don't take up a whole building or a whole block. In fact, you can do it all and have it right in your pocket. Now, the first persons who start saying that, everybody looks at them, including the people who had come up with the first models that took up a whole block. Said, oh, now you're crazy. Now you're crazy. But if you think you can do it, go ahead. You think what I put up that takes up a whole block in a city, you think you can put it in your pocket and come up with some hardware where you can do that? Now you have really gone crazy. And I invented the idea. But I'm telling the next person, who is what they call an innovator, say, I can take your idea and go further with it than you ever thought possible. And the person who came up with the idea would say, yeah, if it was possible, I would do it. But that ain't possible. You'll never be able to carry this around in your pocket. Next thing you know, they all got them in their pocket, including the person who was criticizing them.
Wow. All righty, Dollar. Looks like they've given us a little more time here. Okay. Let's see. Terrence. And I'll get to you, RT and Nicole. Terrence, you're on.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr.
Good morning.
Hope everybody's doing good. I'm going to be quick today, so give everybody else a chance. But what I was thinking about today was I've been studying for an exam, which you have to have 3 years of experience. So 3 years I've been studying this particular project management code. And at the end of it last week, I took a 4-hour exam, and I passed. And here's the interesting thing. While I was studying that code, all I did was study, work out, and take care of business. But the reward for it was a little piece of paper that they gave me and said, now you are a project manager. And my friends were looking for the reward, and they were like, well, what do you get for it now? What's the reward that you're getting? And I was like, well, it's just the study of it that really I see as the reward. And they were like this, well, man, I know you haven't, been drinking or even gotten high in 3 or 4 years and done this, but let's celebrate, man. Let's celebrate. And I got some good weed, and we're going to hang out and do all this other things. So this is what my VGQ is for everybody listening, and you can speak on it, Mr. Fuller. Codification, I realize, is the journey. It's going to tighten us up. It's going to make us more efficient, and the side effects are going to be a better community, justice, and all those things are going to be the side effects. But what we're looking for is a reward, and that's what's going to trick us. We're looking for us to get codified, and then the white supremacists say, oh, okay, because you're so good now, we're going to give you this reward. But the reward is going to be laced with that same thing that we've been trying to get away from. And so that's my VGQ, and that's why I noticed that I'm going to stay on the journey of codification because it sharpens me.
Yes.
So I encourage everybody else to do that too.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much there, Terrence. Thank you so much. All righty. You're listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., here on Blog Talk Radio, and looks like they have given us a little more time. So before we go into a little more time, let's start off in a little bit of time that we have left with Mr. Fuller speaking about his book. Mr. Fuller, take a minute or two to speak about your book, where we can get it from, and all the latest information.
Well, you can get it, the basic version of the book, rather than the original version, which is the 1984 edition, has a computer design on it. Now, that might be what's at that website right now, because right now we are out of the 2016 revised expanded edition, but within about 10 or 12 days, I've been told, we will have those in stock. And also there's a word guide at that website with the original edition by going to producejustice.com. And one of the titles on the book in small print is a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism, which is white supremacy. White supremacy is racism. Racism is white supremacy. There's no other form of racism among the people of the planet Earth, according to logic and evidence. Because you can't have two supremes. That's the theory. And the books are designed to be addressed to the individual person and what that individual non-white person, black, brown, red, yellow, person of color, as we say, can do on a daily basis through his or her thought, speech, and action in all areas of activity, solve their own individual problems, because the theory is if you solve the individual problem for the individual person, you're solving the problem of all persons who have that problem. And the biggest problem for a person of color is the system of racism. So the book is designed to help a person to replace the system of racism with the system of justice. And this is on a daily basis, because people are always asking, what do you do? What can I do? I mean, is there, do I just go to meetings and just keep going to meetings and whatnot? You don't have to go to a meeting of any kind. You'll have it right there in your hand. What to do about every situation that comes up. Yes. Or a model, at least, or a guide for it. And you can get it by going to producejustice.com. I couldn't cover everything that might come up in the world every day for everybody, but I gave examples in it about what to do and what to say. Mm-hmm. And one of the main examples is one that I talked about today. Is what's on page 171 and 172. You might say that's the core example for the entire book in 2 volumes, including the word guide, because it has to do with wants. And what you should want to do is replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice on the way to becoming universal man and universal woman.
Yes, sir.
Go to producejustice.com.
All righty. Let's be codified. Stay codified, everybody. Nicole, get ready. Get ready out there in Maryland. Let me see if I can get you in here. Okay. Go ahead, Nicole. You're on.
Hey, Mr. Fuller. And I forget your name, Mr. Bobby. I think I just said it. No, you're not Mr. Bobby. Anyway, I was calling because I'm glad y'all taking my call, because I've been going through some things, but I'm very grateful, again, for Mr. Fuller keeping the cycle going, because we never make that ball bounce over into that. And I think affirmative action and civil rights was missing, and I'm glad I'm one of the last pillars within the X generation that understood what they was doing in 2000, which was educating us and helping us to move forward through affirmative action. So I just want to say that this radio show is keeping me inspired. It keeps me insane. I mean, from being insane. And I'm glad the topic today was justice because my son was facing 20 years. He got 5. So I'm grateful for that. So it's just I'm still fighting, though, because I went to the law library and was led to a book that was talking about different disabilities and things and, how people is not – they're getting training for that, but they're not taking that into consideration that our kids are suffering from PTSD within our communities, and there's a lot of things that can change the demographics of that. So I'm looking forward to my next move, which is Rough Angels, Inc. on Love's Corner, and being able to assess different communities and where they're at and be able to supply mental, including this book, as a curriculum to help people change the way that they're thinking so that we be able to have a sustainable society with justice in it. So I'm optimistic about that today.
All right. Mr. Fuller, you care to make a comment about her VGQ?
No, except that's an excellent presentation she has made.
All right. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Nicole. Let's see, RT, and then we're going to go to the last caller. Yo, Jeter, you better get in there, but let's go to RT first. Okay, RT, you're on.
Yeah, Dr. Fuller, this is a question I asked last week before I think I was cut off. Dr. Frances Cress-Welsing, I think one of her theories was that the reason why the white supremacists do what they do is because they're afraid of being annihilated. But I think you said that no black person on the planet is in any position to annihilate the system of white supremacy. We don't have the weaponry. But you've also said that the reason why your explanation is the reason why they do what they do is because of fun, glory, and material things. And I kind of stick with your reasoning for why they do what they do when you go around and just look at what's going on as far as where people are living at and who's spending money, who's traveling. I agree with your perception of why they do what they do, which is fun, glory, and material things. Just listen to your comment.
Yes, but it's not a contradiction with what Dr. Wilson is saying. I'm just talking about what I emphasize is it's just the stuff that's the result. She's talking about the origin of the motivation that goes much deeper, and that goes into psychiatry and whatnot. When during the years I was associated with Dr. Wilson, which was right up until the time of her death, I mean, my emphasis was just on what to do about it. And her emphasis is on how they came up with the motivation for how they came up with the plan in the first place, the motivation for coming up with the plan. I just dealt with the plan. And I made it clear to Dr. Wilson that that's what's going to be my emphasis and what to do about their plan once they put it into operation, how to counteract it. I didn't deal into what was the first idea for it. And she says, I'm going right down to the first idea, the very first, for the whole plan that they finally came up with. I just dealt with the plan. So there's no contradiction there. And when people ask me about, well, what do I think about Dr. Wilson's theory, I say, I think that that's her theory. So that's the only answer I can give. Because I never looked into the deep psychology of it and all like that. And that, genetic annihilation and the genes, what's in people's genes and where it came from, and what the molecules are in the body of the white person that motivates them to do that. I never even touched into that. That's far too technical for me. So it's not a contradiction. I never contradicted what Dr. Wilson was saying because she made it clear to me she's going to find out the origin of even the thinking that they had. what came before that thinking. All right? I never touched that because that goes into very, very, very deep psychology. I mean, it goes into the origin of the mind of people, where the people's mind comes from before they even had a mind. All right?
Uh-huh.
And why do people have these different forms of thinking? It goes into the essence of a person's thought. I just didn't go into that because that's real scientific. But there's no contradiction between what I'm saying and Dr. Wilson is saying. It's just different categories of what we worked on. That's all.
Yes. Okay. All righty. Thank you, RT out in Missouri here, but thank you for listening. Okay, here we go. Jita, we need more Jita. In my best Betty Davis voice. Jita, you're the last caller of the day down there in South Carolina. Okay, go ahead, yo, Jita. Go ahead, do your thing. If I can get you in there, you go.
Great rising, Mr. Bobby. Great rising.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Notice in the compensatory word guidebook, the words illusion or inclusion is not in the book.
Oh, there's a lot of words. There are thousands of words that are not in the book. See, the English language, if you really start talking about the English language now, I would, but I would, in order to cover the words that I would want to be in there, I would have to have the type of dictionary that you have in libraries. I've been in some libraries where the English language dictionary, I've seen English language dictionaries in pocket versions, and I've also seen them where you had to have them on wheels. I've seen dictionaries actually on wheels because you could not lift them up without maybe breaking your back. So in my textbook, I don't have a lot of words that are in the English language. It's just a guide. That's why it's called a word guide.
Yes.
I got certain samples to give black people an idea of how to use the English language when it comes to counter-racism. Just to give you a few examples, just a few, because if I was really going to cover the whole English language, you'd have to have a book as big as a car.
Yeah. Okay. All righty. Thank you, Yo Jita. Thank you for your call. Yo Jita was the last call, but we're getting ready to wrap up the show here. Listen, Tez knows Mr. Fuller, and this show does not accept donations. I think Mr. Fuller addressed that a while ago. But we don't accept donations. But what you can do and what anybody else can do is buy the book by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. Or you can also, I understand, get it on Amazon.com and make sure you make mention of the show. But, no, we don't accept donations. Appreciate the thought, but, no, just buy the book. That's
just
good.
Buy the book, yeah.
Mr. Fuller, I'm going to give you the last word before we wrap it up.
That's it. That's the last word. If people really want to help, just direct people's attention to the book. Now, it's not a well-written book. I say it's one of the worst-written books ever in counter-racist science. But okay. I did the best that I could. I'm trying to do better, like I'm trying to do better on this program. But I think it will help if a person reads it with the correct intentions and understands it.
Okay.
Go to producejustice.com.
That goes from me, too. I'm trying to get better. All right. Thank you, for everybody, for listening. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. We'll see you next week. Thank you for the extra time, y'all. Bye.
Yeah.